Hey y'all. Okay, I hope y'all are having a good Sunday. My Sunday's doing pretty good. Last night was a rough night with my chest hurting and stuff, but I'm doing a lot better, even though joy cometh in the morning, right? Well, my joys come in this morning because I had something on my heart that it was just, the more I thought about it, the more it started burning. And so I wanted to share this with you guys for just a little bit today. Today we're going to go to the book of Acts, chapter 27, starting at verse 18. And we being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, the next day they lightened the ship, and the third day we cast out with our own hands the tracking of the ship. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest laid on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. But after long absence Paul stood forth in the midst of them, and saying, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar. And lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Therefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God that it shall be even as it was told to me. Howbeit, we must be cast upon a certain island. I got to thinking about that. And it was just, Paul, he has already been through so much. Paul had he went through a whole lot of stuff. He was beat multiple times, and now he's on this ship. And he's on this ship, and it was a really bad storm. Could you imagine how bad the storm had to be that it's tearing apart this ship? They've been out on the sea. It says in verse 20, and when neither sun nor stars in many days appears. So that lets me know that this wasn't just one day of being in this storm, this bad storm, and it probably was like a hurricane that it's tearing apart this ship. And they were dealing with this storm for many days, for a good little while, for so long that they thought that all hope that they should be saved was then taken away. You have to, at first, you start out strong, and at first you're like, yeah, everything's going to be all right. But after you go through it for a while, you start to be like, well, I'm not so sure if I am going to see the end of this storm, if the end of this is ever going to go away. Just like Paul did. Paul and the sailors that were on the ship with him, and the prisoners that was on the ship with him. But the one thing, even after long absence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them, and he was letting them know, be of good cheer. Even in the middle of the storm, even through all this, he's saying, be of good cheer, because an angel of the Lord stood by him and told him that everything was going to be okay. God, just right when they thought all hope was gone, just right when they thought that there was no hope of them being saved, God sends somebody. He'll send somebody by your way. He'll send something to remind you that you are still his child, that he's still watching over you, because God on the top of the mountaintop is still God in the valley. He's still the same. He doesn't change. It don't make you any less saved because you're down in the valley and you're going through something. No, he's still the same God as he was. He's not forsaken you. He's not left you. Paul could have looked at them. Paul could have told God, say, well, Lord, you ain't doing me like you did Peter. Peter didn't lose his boat. Peter's, you walked on the sea with Peter. You walked through the storm with Peter. And then the storm ceased as soon as you got on the boat. And his boat didn't sink. Here, my boat's being torn apart. And I'm going to have to jump off the boat into the sea and swim to shore. But even when he's swimming to shore, even when he jumps off the boat, the storm's still going. The storm didn't stop just because he got off the boat. The storm still didn't even stop when he got on the island. Because when he was on the island, if you go down to the beginning of verse 28, and it says, it reads in verse 2, it's talking about it being rain, because of the rain and the cold, he went by the fire to try to warm himself. And that's when the venomous snake jumped out of the fire and latched to his hand. But guess what? Because he knew God, because he believed God, even in the storm, he believed that God was still with him in the storm, the same as if he was on the mountaintop. He believed God because he believed God, he could shake off that snake. He can jump off of that ship that's sinking and swim to shore because he knew that God was still with him through the storm. And just because you're going through a storm and stuff doesn't mean that God don't love you. Doesn't mean that God's forgotten about you and let you go to just die in your storm. No, he didn't let Paul die in that storm. He didn't let Paul sink in that ship. Because of Paul, there were many more saved. Because if you read in verse 37, and we were all in the ship, 216 souls were saved. But you know what? A lot of times, the devil also can throw these things at you to try to discourage you and to try to slow you down, because this is his destination. God had his destination. In verse 24, it says, saying, fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar. He had to go there. It was his destination to go to Rome. It wasn't nothing that the devil could probably try to slow your destination down, but it doesn't mean that he can stop it. He may hinder it, and he may try to stop it, but he can't stop it. And when God will use what the devil meant for evil, he'll turn it into good. He maybe tried to kill Paul on that ship, but because Paul believed God, he believed that God didn't leave him there on that ship. He was with him through it all. He used it for his glory, because even in the middle of the storm, he was giving thanks to God. If you go down this verse, I encourage you to read this story. And if you go down, he's giving thanks to God. Even the storm didn't stop, but he can give thanks. And when you can give thanks to God in the middle of your storm, it truly shows where your heart is, because his outcome and the way he responded to everything that was going on, he changed the mindset of all them men. Because if you read in 36, then were they all of good cheer. Your attitude affects other people. When people see that you can have a peace beyond any understanding, because you know that your God is bigger than the storm. My God is bigger than the storm. My God is bigger than anything the devil can throw at me. And when your attitude towards it can affect other people, because they're like, well, look at their faith. Look at what they're going through. And they can still smile and they can still have a peace when other people are panicking. That's saying something right there, because you know what your God can do. But this was what I just got all excited about this story and about Peter and how he could complain. He could complain because his storm didn't end up Paul's storm didn't end up like Peter's storm. And he could have easily complained and said, well, you know what? This ain't fair. This ain't fair, God. You're not treating me the way you treating everybody else. You're not helping me the way you're helping everybody else. Just because he's not helping you the way you think that he should help you doesn't mean that he's not helping you. He helped Paul swim to shore. He helped Paul through every bit of it, and he used it for his glory. And many people were saved. Many people probably believed, and there was people healed. He used the journey of all the mess ups. He still used it for his glory. He still used Paul in a special way, and he can do the same for you. So if just because you're going through the storm, just because you're fighting something, doesn't mean that God has left you. Doesn't mean he's leaving you in the valley to die. Like I said, God is the same in the valley as he is on the mountaintop. You just have to believe God, because if you read in Psalms If you're having a hard time, Psalms is a good book to read, by the way. And if you read in Psalms 18 and 33, he maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and put me, I think I wrote that down wrong, but he maketh my feet like hinds' feet, and he puts you upon high places. He can bring you out of that valley. Don't give up. Don't die in the valley, because that's not where you're meant to stay. It's just a season. It's how you know God. Like Paul knew God. Paul knew God so well that he could have a peace beyond any understanding. And it's how you know God. And maybe he's trying to reveal himself in a different way to you that you've never seen him before. Because we can't all have the same circumstance and be like, well, then we wouldn't have to really live by faith then, would we? Because we can look over here at this person like, well, this person went through it, and I know that's just how God answers things right there. So that's just how it's going to be. Well, that's when faith comes in, because when God don't answer it the way he answered somebody else's, or the way that you think he should, are you still going to have faith? Are you still going to thank him in your storm? Or can you still say God is in control of everything? Because he is. So I hope it encourages you today. I try not to make these videos too long, but I hope it encourages you today. Just because you're in the storm doesn't mean that you're going to die in that storm. Doesn't mean because God didn't answer your prayer the way you thought he should have answered your prayer. Doesn't mean that he's not going to answer your prayer. God's been doing this a long time, He knows what he's doing. He knows exactly how to take care of it. So instead of praying and asking and telling God how to take care of it, put it in God's hands and leave it in God's hands. Don't pick it up. Just pray about it. Even though we can't get to church, like I can't get to church right now, but the church is in you. You are the church. You can make an altar at your house. You can make an altar anywhere. He hears you praying just as much in your home as he does when you're in the church house praying. So just pray and give it to God and leave it there at that wherever you're praying at. Just leave it in his hands, because he knows exactly what to do with it. He knows exactly how to take care of it. So just trust God, believe him, and I pray that it helps somebody today. And I love y'all, and till next time, God bless.